Time to build a brain hat. Are you ready? Let's get started. Okay, for this project, you are absolutely going to have to do some color coding. So what does that mean? Well, you're going to have to outline each lobe in the correct color. You're going to have to shade the name of each lobe. And then you're going to have to circle the important features for each lobe. And I'm going to model what that means very shortly. Optional for extra credit, you are going to color the entire lobe. You still need to circle the important features, but that again will be modeled after. All right, so I'm going to model the required part first, and if instead you want to color the whole thing, you'll see that after. So first, let's look at what is required. So if you're like, I hate coloring, this is the bare minimum. If you're like, I like coloring, then you can move ahead to the next part. So if you are like, coloring is the worst thing on the planet, I just don't want to waste my time doing it, this is the bare minimum that you have to do. Okay, so the required part for the frontal lobe, I'm going to shade, I'm going to shade the name frontal lobe like this. Okay, I'm going to have to do that on the left side and also on the right side. So just shading over the name in the correct color. So I'm using yellow, all right, like this. Then I'm going to have to outline the entirety of the frontal lobe. So the frontal lobe ends at the motor cortex. Sensory cortex is not part of the frontal lobe. So I'm just going to outline around the entire edge of the frontal lobe. Okay, so going around like this, and then this right here. Okay, now right now I'm on the right side, so I have the lobe outlined, I have the frontal lobe shaded, and then I'm going to circle a couple of key areas. So that is the premotor area, that is for planning movement, okay, and the motor cortex, okay, that is for actually doing the movement. And then here on the right side, not that it only happens on the right side, but it's just written here, I'm going to do decision making. Okay, so just to highlight a few areas on this side. Okay, now I'm going to do the same thing on the left side. So there's the right side prepared. Now left side, I already shaded the name, but again, I don't want to include sensory cortex, so I want to do this edge right here of motor cortex, but I need to go around the whole edge of the frontal lobe, just outlining it in yellow. Again, this is if you are like, I really just don't like coloring that much. And just to get the required bits in. All right, so now it's outlined, and then I'm going to just highlight a few things. Again, the premotor area for planning movement, the motor cortex for actually moving, and then the one that we're going to highlight here is analyzing. So it's going to give you your personality, all those things. And then right here, this one, super important, only on the left side in the frontal lobe, Broca's area. Okay, so that is a really important piece. And that would complete your frontal lobe. Left side, right side, that's it. Okay, now I'm moving on. I'm going to do parietal lobe, and this one I'm doing in green. So I'm going to shade the name. Right now I'm working on the right side. I'm going to shade the name parietal lobe. Okay, then I need to trace the outline of this lobe, and the frontal lobe and the parietal lobe meet right here. So this edge right here, which had yellow for the frontal lobe, that's where I'm going to start with parietal lobe, and then go all the way back to this line. This line is the separation with the occipital lobe, so like this. Okay, that would be the entire parietal lobe outlined. And then what we're going to highlight, underline here, we have sensory cortex. Okay, and then knowing where the body is in 3D space, that's proprioception. Okay, those are kind of our big key things that we're going to highlight here in parietal lobe. This was right side, but I need to do the same exact thing with the left side. So I still need to, at the edge where it meets up with the frontal lobe, okay, then go down this side until I get to this line. That's the divider with the occipital lobe, and go across. Okay, so I outlined the entire lobe. I need to shade the name of the lobe, parietal lobe, and then sensory cortex, okay, and knowing where your body is in 3D space. Okay. What you should draw attention to is it says sensory cortex for the right side of the body when we're in the left hemisphere of the brain, and the reverse. But that is parietal lobe. We did the left side, we did the right side, and we're ready to move on. All right, now we're ready to move on. I'm looking on the left side first. Doesn't really matter. I'm getting to occipital lobe, which is red. So it's going to start with the border with the parietal lobe. Go down this side. Okay, come around, and then this line is the edge that's shared with the temporal lobe. So I have it outlined. I'm going to shade occipital lobe in red. And then I'm going to circle, well, there's only one thing here. Occipital lobe is vision, but this is right eye because I'm on the left side. Now we're going to do the same thing on this side. So right where I meet up with the parietal lobe right here. So I'm going to outline over here to where I match up with temporal lobe. And then I do need to go down this side over here, round this way. So there we go, occipital lobe. Shade the name in red, okay, and circle left eye because we're on the right side of the brain. It controls the left eye, and that's it. That was occipital lobe. Okay, now we're going to do temporal lobe. Okay, so right now I'm looking at the right side. It honestly doesn't matter which side you start. I'm using the lighter blue, but that's not a requirement, right? So I'm going to come around, and it's going to share a border up here with the parietal lobe and with the frontal lobe. And then as we come around the parietal lobe, it also shares a border with the occipital lobe. Okay, so that one touches them all. So I trace the border. I'm going to shade the name like this, the temporal lobe, all right? And then what I want you to focus on for temporal lobe is to remember it is hearing, okay? So that was the right side. Now let's move to the left side and do the same idea. So I need to trace the outline of the temporal lobe like this. Remember, it shares a border with frontal, with parietal, and then with the occipital lobe in the back. So there, I've outlined it. Now let's shade temporal lobe in the correct color, which is blue. And then again, I told you hearing, but the left side has a unique feature, and that is Wernicke's area, and that's for comprehension. So definitely mark this one, but that's only on the left side. And we are set with temporal lobe. All right, now we're going to do the cerebellum. So we're going to outline the cerebellum right here in brown. So I'm outlining the edge, shade the name cerebellum, and then I'm going to circle, which it really only has these things: balance, muscle memory, coordination. So that was the left side. Let's do the same thing on the right side. This cerebellum, trace around the outside, okay, like this. Okay, and then shade the name cerebellum and circle the key feature: balance, muscle memory, coordination. That was cerebellum, easy peasy. Okay, now we're going to look at the optional coloring, which is extra credit. So let me just recap. This is what it looks like with our required. So we have outlines and things circled and shaded. Okay, so that is the required. If you want to do the optional version, yours, when it's finished, is going to look like this. So if you enjoy coloring, this might be something that you want to do. Again, there's the other side of the brain when it is the optional. It's going to be worth some extra points, but it is not required. You decide which one you would rather do. All right, our first step is to color our temporal lobe. So I have 2 pages. I have left and right, so I'm going to need to do both. So I need to color the temporal lobe blue. Now, this part where it looks like this, it's going to be cut out. So I really just want to focus on the other areas. Okay, so but I want to color completely all of the temporal lobe blue. So I'm using the light blue. You can absolutely use the dark blue. That's your preference, but do not use marker as it is going to cover up all of the wonderful things that are written here on the lobes. Okay, so I'm coloring temporal. So again, this part is going to be hidden right here, so I can skip it, but I'm going to want to do both sides. So on this side, I'm going over to this slide right here where it has Wernicke's area. So this little curve over here, all the way over, and then down in this area. Oops, something is under this paper. Okay, so again, I want to color all of this area. This is all the temporal lobe. The area I don't need to worry about so much is this in between, because this is going to be hidden once it is complete. So, but I want all of this blue. Okay, so you can see there's my temporal lobe colored blue. Again, I use the light blue. You do not have to. Main feature right here is hearing. Okay, so I'm circling that, hearing, and over here, Wernicke's area. Okay, those are 2 key things that are occurring in the temporal lobe. So those are the big things that you should remember: Wernicke's area, hearing, and temporal, and the Wernicke's area and hearing in the temporal lobe. But that was just one side, so I'm going to need to do the same thing on this side. So I'm going to start it right here, temporal lobe. I'm going to pause this as I complete the coloring. Okay, so there we go. You can see I have both temporal lobes colored blue. I'm going to focus on hearing, right? Hearing. What you'll notice is that Wernicke's area, that one thing I told you to focus on, only on the left side. It is not on the right side, so that is an example of lateralization. Okay, so temporal lobe, that's our first step. You're coloring that blue. All right, next job, we're going to use yellow, and we're going to color the frontal lobe. So how far? So it's all the way over here, but not the sensory cortex. So it's going to end at the motor cortex. So here is this end. Okay, so all the way from here, all of this, all the way over here. So I'm going to color everything in between here, and I'm going to do the same thing on the right side. So I'm going to go from this end right here all the way, and including motor cortex, but not sensory cortex. So I'm going to go all the way to here. So this area in between is all going to be colored yellow. Then we'll look at what to focus on. So I'm going to pause this as I color, because really, do you need to watch me coloring it? Not really. So I'm going to color this entire frontal lobe from here, again, including the motor cortex, all of this on the right side, and I'm going to do the same thing on the left side, from this end all the way through up to and including motor cortex. Reminding that these little glitches right here, these little triangles, they're going to be cut So I don't need to be worrying about coloring in that space, but it's not bad if you do. So let me pause while I color. All right, there we go. I have the right frontal lobe all the way over through the motor cortex and the left frontal lobe. Okay, I'm going to use black to just circle the key areas because I feel like it won't show up as well in white. So one is Broca's area. That is absolutely essential. Also notice that's on the left side, but not the right side. Okay, so that's intentional. So here, the premotor and the motor cortex. Okay, so the premotor and the motor cortex, I'm just going to underline that. So that's planning movement and actually doing movement. Okay, and there's all kinds of things related to, you know, making you who you are, your personality, all that kind of thing. So let's just circle analyzing and decision making, okay, as some key features of our frontal lobe. Okay, so decision making, analyzing, you can see there's lots of stuff also, okay, but Broca's area, premotor cortex, and motor cortex. So there we have the frontal lobe. All right, our next step, we're going to color parietal lobe green. So the important thing is to get all of the parietal lobes. So this line right here is going to be a divider. So I need to go from here, okay, all the way to the frontal lobe. So this whole entire area, all of this, okay, that's all going to be green. Again, where we have these triangles, we're not going to worry about coloring there, although it's totally fine if you do, okay? And I'm going to do the same thing on the left side. And again, here is my line right here, all the way to here. So all of this in between here. Again, not necessarily focusing on coloring this little triangle out, but I need to color both the left parietal lobe and the right parietal lobe. So let me pause as I color those. All right, here we go. So we had colored parietal lobe on the right side, parietal lobe on the left side. I'm going to grab the dark green just so it stands out a little bit. So I'm going to underline sensory cortex. That is key. And knowing where your body is in 3D space, so proprioception. Okay, so marking that on the left side. Let's look at the right side. Again, sensory cortex. Okay, knows where the body is in 3D space. Okay, those are kind of key things for the parietal lobe. So there we go, parietal lobe colored in green and kind of featuring a few things. All right, and we have our last lobe of the cerebrum to color, and that's occipital lobe. So that is in the back right here. So that is everything that is left in the cerebrum. So remember, the cerebrum is the largest part of the brain, divided into 4 lobes. Each side, though, remember, has each of those 4 lobes. So we have a right occipital and a left occipital, a right parietal and a left parietal. So there we go. I just colored the right occipital lobe red, but now I need to do the same with the left occipital. So back here, this last corner. So again, as a reminder, each half of the brain, each hemisphere, right side, left side, has 4 lobes. So in total, we have 8 lobes. They're just duplicates. 2 frontal lobes, a right frontal, a left frontal. 2 temporal lobes, a right temporal, a left temporal. 2 parietal lobes, a right parietal, a left parietal, and then 2 occipital lobes, a right occipital and a left occipital. All right, so there we go. So this is the left, see that? Left occipital, and it is responsible for, so vision. So that's the right eye, and then our right side of our brain in the occipital lobe, that is the left eye, okay? So left eye, right side of the brain, right eye, left side of the brain. And there we go, we colored the occipital lobe. Okay, now down here we have the cerebellum, okay? And the cerebellum we're going to color brown. We don't need to worry about this up here. That's just going to be used for attachment. So we're going to color down here the cerebellum, the little bell. This is the little brain, the little part of the brain underneath the cerebrum. So the cerebellum. And as I'm finishing this side, this is the right side. Balance, muscle memory, okay, coordination. So we did the right one, but now we need to do the left cerebellum as well. The cerebellum, like a bell. So it hangs below the cerebrum. It's like a small brain. Balance and muscle memory, coordination, okay? So being able to plan those muscle movements to walk and drive and write and do all those wonderful things. So balance and muscle memory. And there we go. We colored the cerebellum. Okay, so from this point, you're going to complete your brain hat the same way. So we're going to be cutting and we're going to be taping. And whether you just outlined and shaded or whether you colored the whole thing, at this point, you're going to complete it exactly the same. Cut on the same lines, tape in the same locations. That's it. Okay, so we're going to cut out the left cerebrum. Remember the cerebrum, the largest part of the brain, and we're going to do the left side. So yours might look like this if you colored the whole thing, or yours might look like this if you just did the shading. So what I want to do is cut just along the outside edge, okay, of the left hemisphere. All right, so all around like this. I'm just cutting the outside edge of the left hemisphere. Okay, so this is it. I'm just cutting along, again, outside edge of the left hemisphere. Whether I have colored all of like this, okay, if this is what yours looks like, you're going to do the same exact thing. You're going to just cut along the outside edge of the left hemisphere. So it doesn't matter which type of coloring and shading you used, you're going to cut it the exact same way, just along this outside edge of the left hemisphere. So around the frontal lobe, here I'm going around temporal lobe, I already went around parietal, and then I'm going to get this last edge of the occipital. Okay, so I have this. I have left or left. Yours is going to look like one of these. Okay, so I cut out the left cerebrum. Okay, now I'm going to cut out the left cerebellum. So I'm going to cut it along the outside edge. All right, now it has these little marks here, but honestly, I can just cut across like this. Okay, I don't need to cut them out. If you really want to, go ahead, but I have built the brain hat just fine like this. So your cerebellum might look like that, or if you colored the whole thing, okay, it is going to look like this. And again, I am not worried about cutting those little grooves out, so I'm just going to do that. All right, so now either you have this piece and this piece, or you have this piece and this piece. Okay, now you have these scraps, okay, to recycle at this point. Okay, so recycle those. Okay, so I'm going to show you it's going to be the same. We're going to tape the cerebellum into place on the left side. So what I need is just a piece of tape about this big, all right? And what I'm going to want to do, take the cerebellum, flip it this way. You see how that was a good size piece of tape? So along like this. And what I want to do is go where I have the occipital lobe back here, okay? Kind of line up the edge so I don't have those showing. Do you see how I didn't really need to cut them? And just tape it like that. That's it. Add the cerebellum. So again, you're going to need a piece of tape about this big. Put it on the back side right here of the cerebellum. So it's like this. This is the sticky side. Find where you have your occipital lobe, okay, and kind of just match it up so you don't have those empty white slots showing. So like this. So either like this or like this. So you have your cerebellum taped on to your left hemisphere. Then we're going to set that aside for now. Okay, now we're going to do the same exact thing for our right hemisphere. So this should be easy. Again, if you only did the shading, yours is going to look like this if you just didn't want to color the whole thing. All right, so you would just cut around the outside of the cerebrum. Remember, the cerebrum, largest part of the brain, is divided into 4 hemispheres on each side. So we have 2 temporal lobes, 2 parietal lobes, 2 occipital lobes, okay, as you can tell here. So I cut along the outside edge like this. If you decided to go for the extra credit because coloring is just awesome, then yours looks like this, and you are still going to do the same thing and cut along the outside edge of your cerebrum, your temporal lobe, your frontal lobe, your parietal lobe, and your occipital lobe. Remember, we have 2 of each because we have a left hemisphere and a right hemisphere. There are a few things that are specifically lateralized, like only on the left side, but that's not everything. So there we go. So either it's going to look like this, cut out, right hemisphere, or like this. Okay, now I'm just going to cut out the cerebellum, this little piece right here. Okay, little brain, like a bell. So I'm going to cut just along the outside edge. And remember, I don't really need to worry about cutting into those grooves, so I can just cut straight across like that. Okay. Whether your cerebellum looks like that, or you just did the shading and your cerebellum looks like this, you're going to do the same thing. So you can see right here, I'm not worrying about cutting into those grooves, just cutting straight across. But then I need to cut around the outside edge for the rest of it. Okay. Now I have some scraps. You're going to recycle those scraps. So either I will have this outline version or this completely colored version, whichever one you have. Okay, just like we did on the left side, we're going to do the same thing on the right side and tape our cerebellum into place. So this is the sticky side of the tape. So I'm going to attach it like this, okay, along the cerebellum. So this side is sticky. And then I'm just going to line it up so that I don't see all of that white. And just line it up like this at the occipital lobe, so at the edge like that. And if I did the other type, same idea, tape this way. So this is sticky. And I'm going to line it up with my occipital lobe so I don't have a big empty space like that showing, and like that. So now I have right hemisphere, either looks like this or like this. Okay. Okay, so now I'm going to have to cut a lot of solid lines. So I'm just going to show you where they are. So all along the cerebrum, I have these little kind of cut out triangles, and there's a solid line and a dotted line. Do not cut on the solid, on the dotted, just cut on the solid. So like that. Cut on the solid line, going all the way around. So I have a bunch of triangles going around. I'm cutting on the solid line again, all the way around. Cut on the solid line all the way around. Okay, and there's a bunch of these triangles. Don't skip any. Cut on the solid line. Okay, then I get to the cerebrum. I don't have one there, but I do have one over here in the temporal lobe. It's the big one though. So it goes all the way up to there. Okay, so I need to cut like that. So that is the right hemisphere if it looks like this. So I'm just going to show you on this one again. We're cutting on solid lines. Every single spot where you see that triangle and you see the dotted line, you want to cut on the solid line close to it. So I'm cutting on all the solid lines all the way around. Okay, don't skip any. Cut on all the solid lines, going all the way around. And then don't forget, you gotta flip around and do this on the temporal lobe. Okay, so again, we're cutting on the solid line. That one is just a long one, so don't forget all of it. Okay, so that would be right side. But remember, you only have one right side. And then you are going to repeat the same thing on the left side. So no different. You're just going to be on the opposite side, but you're still cutting only solid lines. Okay, cut as straight as you can, on the line as much as you can. You're only cutting solid lines all the way around. And then you're not going to forget, you have one big one at the temporal lobe. Okay, so cutting all along the solid line. All right, so one more demonstration. You're going to cut on solid line, solid line, solid line, solid line, solid line, solid line, solid line. One more big one, that's the temporal lobe, again cutting on the solid line. And there we go. That is ready to move on to the next step. Okay, we're going to start taping the left side first. How will I know which one is the left side? Look for Broca's area and Wernicke's area, only on the left hemisphere. Okay, we're going to start with the frontal lobe and move back. For each one, okay, I'm just going to need a small piece of tape, not a giant piece of tape. And I'm going to take this piece right here and fold it over so that I cover that dotted edge, okay, like this. And then I'm going to take my piece of tape and put it here and fold it over. So I don't need to tape this whole piece, I just need to tape the edge so it stays together. Okay, then I'm going to get another piece of tape, and right here I'm going to take this, pull it over so it gets to the dotted line, and it may be a little off here. I'm really worried about the edge right here. And then I'm going to take this piece of tape, you see a small piece, divide it like this so it is holding those pieces. I'm going to flip it around so it goes around to the back like this. Okay, then I need another piece of tape. I'm going to go to the next area. I'm going to pull this so it gets to the dotted line. Okay, then I'm going to take my tape, put it like this, flip it over so it holds it together. You can see I'm kind of getting a curve, which is the idea. Okay, and then I'm going to continue doing this no matter which type. So if I'm doing this one, I'm still going to start at the frontal lobe. I start with my piece of tape. I'm going to pull this over and line it up like this, flip it around the back like that. Then I get another piece of tape, take this piece, pull it over so it covers that dotted right there, line it up so it holds that in place, flip it around the back. Okay, one more like this, pull it over so it covers that dotted line, line up the tape like this, flip it around the back. Okay, so you can start to see that curve forming. That's the idea. Okay, we're turning this, instead of a flat piece of paper, we're turning it curved. All right, so you're going to continue for this frontal lobe all the way back over to this one, and then I'll show you what to do. So you have a few more here, or if you're doing this one, I'll get back over to this occipital lobe, and then I'll show you how to do the temporal piece. All right, here is what it should look like now. So look at how nice and curved that is, and we have this last piece to do. Okay, so I'm going to start again with just a small piece of tape. But remember, this is a bigger chunk, so I'm going to fold it over so I cover that dotted line. And I'm going to attach it, tape it down here, fold it over. But you see this kind of has a big gap here. So I'm just going to take a small piece of tape and just add that right here just to give it a little bit of strength. Okay, so let me show you again using this side. I'll start with a small piece of tape. Again, I'm going to fold over so that I'm at where the dotted line is. Take this, attach these two pieces together, fold it over, but I tend to have kind of a big gap. So to give it some strength, you see, like a little piece, and put this right here. There you go. Okay, now I'm going to tape the right side. So remember our left side, how we could tell, we had Wernicke's area and we had Broca's area. So we can see no Broca's area, no Wernicke's area. So we're going to start taping. And again, you're just going to use a small piece of tape, and you're going to take the solid line and bring it over so that it covers the dotted line right at the edge. Okay? And then you're going to take the tape, attach those two pieces and loop it over. Okay, get a small piece of tape, fold the solid line over so it's at the dotted line, press the tape down, fold it over. Okay, small piece of tape, solid line to where the dotted line is, and hold those two pieces, fold it over. And then you're going to continue down this side. Let me show you this side, starting it up. Okay, so take the solid line, bring it over to the dotted line, take my small piece of tape, attach and fold over. Okay, take my small piece of tape, the solid line, at the dotted line, attach my piece of tape, fold it over. All right, take the solid line, bring it over to where the dotted line is, take my piece of tape and fold it over. And then you're just going to continue down here to this last one in the occipital lobe. So I'm going to do that and then show you where I am. All right, so I had gone all the way around, starting on the frontal and gone all the way to the occipital lobe. You see how it has a nice curve to it now. I have one left. You can see this spot for the temporal lobe. So I'm going to start with just a small piece. Okay, and I'm going to fold the solid line over so it's at the dotted line. I'm going to attach right here. But remember, I kind of have a big gap right here. So I'm going to take another small piece of tape and just press it down here to give a little bit of strength. Okay, let me show you again, but using this one, if this is the one you wanted to do for extra credit with all that coloring. I'm going to take this and fold it over, use this small piece of tape, fold that under, attach it, but again, big gap, I don't really want that. For some strength, take a small piece of tape. Okay, there we go. So now we have our right side. All right, this is probably the most confusing part. So I need my two halves that are the same. Okay, so I'm gonna model it twice, so hopefully that makes sense. All right, but I need to match up the two sides. So I'm gonna match up frontal, okay, like this. And then I'm going to flip it. So I'm going to have them upside down, but you can see frontal lobe here and frontal lobe here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is start by matching up the edge, but I'm going to start at the frontal side. So you see how there's like this groove here where I had taped? Okay, I don't really want these to overlap. I just want to have them close to each other. And then I'm going to take a piece of tape and tape it right here. Okay. Then I'm going to find the next place where I had two creases. Okay, so that was where the triangles were, and take a piece of tape and press it down. Okay. And then I'm going to fold it again to where I have those two triangles where they were. Take a piece of tape. Kind of a little bit awkward sometimes. Tape it down. Okay, and then I'm going to fold it again, kind of folding it into each other. All right, and all right, I'm going to flip it this way. I think I can navigate it a little easier. Okay, so right here. So I'm going to kind of bend it in. There might be a little overlap. Okay, I'm going to tape it right here. Okay, so I'm going to kind of do this, turn it like this as I'm taping to see how nicely it lines up right there. And I'm going to tape that. Okay, so again, kind of a little twist like this. Here I've got another spot. Tape that. Okay. All right, this one is hard to see. Let me show you. So turn it like this, and it's right there. Okay, so let me just get the tape. Okay, so again, where I'm going to be taping, right, you see where those two edges touch? Right there. All right, and then we are at the back. We got all the way to the occipital lobe. So you see how it is all connected? There we go. All right. Now, if you have, see right here, this one right here is sticking up a little bit. I can add an extra piece of tape. I could just pull this off for a second and adjust a little bit so I didn't have that little bump. Okay, there we go. But that's it. So that's this one. Let me show you on the other one just as another model. So again, I have my two halves. I'm going to flip it upside down. I'm going to have the frontal side toward me for both sides. So you can see frontal, frontal, they're facing me. Okay. I'm going to get a piece of tape, and what I want to do is line up where those triangles had been, where I had done to make it have a curved shape. Okay, and I'm going to want to put a piece of tape there. Okay, then I'm going to kind of want to bring it like this, okay, to where the next part is, tape it. Okay, again, a little curve, like you see, bring it like this, and tape it. Now, probably at this point, flipping it this way is a little bit easier. Okay, so again, kind of curve it in. Give it a little twist and tape it right here. All right, give this a little twist, tape it right here, a little twist, tape it here. Almost done. Last one. So this one is just the hardest to see. Okay, kind of pull it like this. There we go. And we're going to tape it right there. So now we have the two sides taped together. Okay, you did it. You made it. Lots of the instructions. So yours may look like this if you colored the whole thing. So the last step is to take pictures. So you got to put it on. And I have a giant head. So and you're going to put it on with facing front, and then you need one picture to the side. So you could use the camera on your laptop or use your phone. So one picture front view, and then one picture side view, because that is going to show that you colored it correctly. Now, if you did the other type, this one right here, same thing. You're still going to put it on. This one I did a little tighter, but it will fit as well. And then you're going to have one view from the front and then one from the side. Okay? So maybe it's just my hair tie today is being problematic. So again, take your two pictures. One has to be from the front view and one has to be from the side view. And that's it. That is building a brain hat, the directions.